What was the best orgasm you've ever had? My first ever orgasm from oral sex. The relationship was still new and my nerves were getting in the way of achieving a full erection. Even when I got hard, I never reached orgasm even after hours, and it was very frustrating for both of us. I learned to relax after some advice one day, and that night I finally reached orgasm. It still took some time for me to get fully erect, and reaching it took an hour, but when I finally did, and I remember this very clearly even though it was years ago, I felt high. The good kind. Like I was floating for a good 5 minutes. My first one. The first time I masturbated I was 21. I made it through the entirety of my teenage years without masturbating. So much pent-up sexual energy. You can't imagine how good that release felt. Damn, we got a god in this thread. 16/17 of a year old. Had the most enthusiastic blowjob on a staircase. I nearly fell over from the suction follow-through when it hit. I leaned over her and accidentally triggered an alarm to prevent roof access to the building. My heartbeat raced, my entire body pulsating, and she swallowed it all whole. Still haven't topped that stimulation. I've had definitely better sex and blowjobs than that particular partner, but there was something about the scenario and alarm that can't be matched in the privacy of a bedroom. Just have her sound an air horn in your ear as you're finishing. My wife was going on a trip and convinced me not to jack off the entire time she was gone. She was 10 days. We f***ed the day she got back and I was able to go back to back. The second orgasm was the best. I thought back to back was some sort of position and was trying to visualize how that worked. LMAO. Every time my girlfriend finishes me off by giving me head, it's like that hyper-sensational feeling from tickling, but it's pure pleasure and excitement. I'm immovable afterwards. Freshman year of high school. Algebra 2 class. For reference, this high school had a warning bell that came 8 minutes before the end of the period. It was a test day. I came in feeling really prepared. I felt like I had a good grasp on the material. Well, I was working away on the test when I heard the 8-minute bell, and I was nowhere near being finished. I was getting really nervous, so I crossed my legs and tensed up. Just general nervous habits. Eventually I heard the actual bell ring and I panicked. All of that tenseness shot up, and while I was working on a problem, I felt it. I had an orgasm right there in my math class. And it was the best thing I've ever felt. I couldn't write at all. I nearly moaned out loud, and I had to take at least a minute to gather myself. You know how I mentioned it was a math class? Well, I told my then boyfriend about what happened because it was a scary experience. As pleasurable as it was, and he still makes fun of me for being turned on by math. I came so hard I threw up. My balls were hurting so bad. TF were you doing, my guy? Excessive hand holding. Worst moment of my life. Joined the crew team my freshman year of college. My first 2K test. Essentially sprinting for 8 minutes. To test we lined all the ERGs up in a row and all start at the same time. Get on the erg and start pulling super hard. Not pacing myself at all. I get about 2 minutes in and start to get super light-headed and an intense warmth in my clit. I start to panic as I realize the inevitability of what's going to happen. I come so hard that I spasm off the erg with my feet still strapped in. All I see is bright white. My ears are ringing. Pretty sure I peed myself a little too. The contractions were so powerful they shook my entire body. It was a sensation that transcended sexuality. The pleasure was so pure and unending. I ruined the 2K test. The girls gathered around me thinking I was having a seizure. I was crying of shame and embarrassment when I came to. I am always super careful to pace myself now. My biggest fear is this happening again when I'm actually in the shell. I dated this one girl who had a condition where her hands would sweat all the time for no reason. Her hand jobs felt better than any vagina I've ever been in, and she'd swallow to finish, so it was great. I just started taking Wellbutrin. I went to see my FWB. She wasn't up for sex, but was down for a HJ/BJ. Well, she starts going at it and I feel a build up like never before. Eventually I reach orgasm and it was amazing. Not the best but really good. For some reason she keeps going. She keeps jerking me good. Now, you know how a girl reacts when you overstimulate her clit. That was me. I was bucking my hick. trying to push her hand away, but she wouldn't quit. Within a minute, I came again, but this was different. This was something else. My whole body seemed to orgasm at the same time. I felt such a powerful orgasm I was speechless. It was phenomenal. I was in such bliss. Shocked my FWB asked me if I was okay. All I could mutter was an aha. My fog finally cleared up after 5 minutes and I could form a sentence. And I told her that it was the best I'd ever had. I've been chasing it ever since. It's a high that I may never get again. Also, masturbation is really good on Wellbutrin as well, but I guess I built up a hell of a tolerance because it's not as good anymore. First time ever busted a nut. I was damn near hallucinating seeing dancing brooms from that Magic Mickey cartoon. I'm almost 50 and last year I got divorced after almost 15 years of marriage. Fortunately, it good terms. It was a mutual decision. Other than our daughter, we hadn't had much, if anything, in common for quite some time. Also, for different reasons, we hadn't been intimate pretty much since after our daughter was born almost 10 years before. I never cheated on my wife, though I must admit the temptation was there a few times. But I was able to resist it. After finding my own place, I didn't feel like dating, let alone starting a relationship. I wanted to be alone and have to figure things out. This doesn't mean that I fell into a depression and wouldn't leave my flat. Quite the opposite. Fortunately, friends encouraged me to go out, to be among people, as one of them said, and I did just that. Now I could go to the cinema, on a hike or to the pub whenever I felt like it, without having to let anyone know where I was going or what time I was coming back, or whether I was coming back. Which takes me to the answer to the question. It was a Monday evening in late May last year. I was going home back from the pub. It was still relatively early, about 10. I got to where I take the bus back home with time to spare and I went to grab a bite at one of the pizza shops at the metro station. Since it was raining, instead of eating by the bus stop, I stayed on the stairs that go to the street. I was almost finished when a girl, much younger than me, let's call her V, comes out of the pizza shop and starts talking to me. After exchanging a few words, she invites me to join her and her guy friend for some pizza and wine. I agreed. I could always take the next bus. I told myself. My two new friends were fun. We were having a great time talking and sharing stories while drinking cheap wine and eating pizza bread. Somewhere around 11, the woman running the pizza shop announced she wanted to go home and V grabbed a bottle of wine from the fridge, paid the bill and told me, "Hey, I live next door. Why don't you come over? We can have some more wine at my place." At that point I was in that level of drunkenness where you can still speak even in a foreign language. I'm a long-time immigrant in this country and move with hardly any trouble. The same level where everything looks like a great idea. Otherwise I don't think I would have accepted the invitation. But I did. I started to get a bit confused when we were on the lift and the guy friend put his hand on my shoulder, said, "Hey, it was nice meeting you. Hope we can hang out again. V has my number," and then he added something like, "Don't worry, mate. It's all cool," before grabbing his bike and leaving when the lift got to the V's floor. V invited me into her flat, went to the kitchen to fetch glasses and a bottle opener and told to serve the wine and wait a few minutes while she walked her dog. So there I was, in a stranger's home, unable to fully process what was happening. Things became very clear when she came back, had a sip of wine and said she was having a shower, or rather, after she came out of the shower and walked into the room naked, still drying herself, and told me I could also have a shower if I wanted, which I did. I also realized she was pretty hot at that moment. After the shower, I also went into the room naked. We drank some wine, talked and started to cuddle, until we both fell asleep in a drunken stupor. It must have been 5 in the morning when the noise from the street woke me up. I was also feeling cold, went to shut the window. V woke up, too, and picked up the conversation we were having before we passed out. And before I could say anything she started to give me a blowjob and did it all the way till the end. When I came and it took longer than I would have imagined, my mind went blank for a second. It was as if a voltage surge had short-circuited it and the system had to be rebooted. She called in sick at work and I stayed with her in bed until noon or so. When I got home on Tuesday afternoon I still couldn't believe what had happened to me. I'm still in touch with V. We meet at least once a month to hang out, go to the pub or the cinema. Sometimes we end up at her place, but not always. She's really cool. When my wife was pregnant she was really sick for the first like 3 to 4 months. When she started to feel better she was very flirty and touchy, but I hadn't really been expecting sex considering she had always been sick up to this point. Got home from work one day, kissed her, talked for a minute and went to hop in the shower. She comes in and joins me, which wasn't abnormal, we showered together often, but when we got out and dried off she started going down on me, and we took it to the floor with her on top. To cut a long story short, we rolled around and boned on the bathroom floor. We hadn't had sex in months and with her riding me, no condom, I exploded in her not once but twice. One after the other. I've never been able to have 2 orgasms in a row like that before and haven't since. It was insane. Picture this. We were both butt naked banging on the bathroom floor. I went 45 days without a nut. When I finally broke down and rubbed one out it lasted forever and came out thick as shit. Like toothpaste. 9 out of 10 dentists recommend. Prostate orgasm by doing Kegels. I was decently drunk at the time and I started getting the spins just from how intense it was. I'd say it was a 10, while regular orgasm is about a 3. I once edged all day and erupted with the power of 1,000 suns. This was during a storm and at the moment I came, I heard thunder crash around me. I had angered the gods.